Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to do a production function. Remember that the production function is looking at how the law of variable proportions, how when we add one more worker, how this affects not only our production but also the amount it costs us to produce our items, as well as how much potential revenue we can generate. So we're going to start with this. This is an example of a production function. I used some of the beginning of a warm-up that we did as an example and then added to that. If you need extra practice with working on this, remember that the cost and revenue worksheet that I gave you in class, that is homework which is due tomorrow. The other classes got different production functions, so you could potentially go to look at one of the other classes' production functions and use that as well. So those all can be found on my website, on the your class website, and you can look at the other classes' production functions. Okay, so to get started, what we're going to first start with is we're going to start with, we have all 10 columns here, and so we can actually look at the first 3 columns together. We're going to look at the first 3 columns, and so remember the first column is the number of workers, second column is how much total items we were able to produce because we had that many workers, and the marginal product is going to be how much extra we added because we had one more worker. So to do these 3 columns, you have to remember the equation marginal product is at 1 worker is the total product at 1 worker minus the total product at 0 workers. So, for example, we're going to start with at 1 worker, I am asking for the marginal product at 1 worker. So you're going to take the total product at 1 worker minus the total product at 0 workers. So 14 minus 0 will give you 14. For 2 workers, now I'm giving you the marginal product for 2 workers is 27. So I'm telling you that they made an extra 27 items with that second worker. We know that the first worker already produced 14 items. So to figure out how much both workers together produced, we're going to take 14 and add 27. Okay, so basically we're reorganizing this to say that the total product at 1 worker is the total product at 0 workers plus the marginal product at 1 worker. So all we're doing is saying 14 plus 27 will give us 41. For 3 workers, we know all 3 workers together produce 78 items, and we want to know how much extra that third worker added to our total product. So to do that, you're going to take 78 is how many 3 workers produced, 41 is how many 2 workers produced. So if you subtract 78 minus 41, this will give you 37. This tells you that these are 37 extra items we were able to produce because we added that third worker. For the 4th worker, okay, we know that the 4th worker we had 15 extra items that were added because of the 4th worker. We know that 3 people already produced 78 items. So if you take 78 plus 15, this will give you 93 total items that all 4 workers together produced. For the 5th worker, we know all 5 workers together produced 98 items. We want to know how much extra that 5th person added to our total product. So if we take 98 minus 93, this will give us 5 items that we were able to add because of that 5th worker. The 6th worker, actually, we lost product, so we had a -4 for our marginal product. So for our 5th worker, it's going to be 98 plus a -4 to get 94 total products. So that's the first 3 columns. The next 4 columns we're going to take together, and we're actually going to take the first 3 columns. Remember, it's going to be very helpful if you remember exactly examples of what these actually mean. So if you remember, fixed cost is going to be rent, how much we're paying in rent. Variable cost is going to be how much we're paying our workers in wages. Okay? So the equations we need to remember for this are that variable cost is wage times the number of workers, and total cost is going to be fixed costs plus variable costs. So where do you start with this? Well, fixed costs, I didn't give you anything, and if you remember, fixed cost stays the same. Well, I didn't give you anything on that, so you can skip that for now. Come back to it. Go to variable cost. I gave you $195 is our variable cost for 3 workers. So that means that we are paying, remember, this is wages, so this means $195 is how much we're paying for 3 workers. So we can use that information, use this equation, so $195 is wage times 3 workers. We can figure out the wage of $195 divided by 3 workers will give you $65. Okay? Remember, that's how much we're paying 1 worker. So you're going to put 65 as the wage. That's how much we're paying 1 worker. So we're putting 65 in for the variable cost, because that's wages, at 1 worker. Now you can figure out the variable cost all the way down. So variable cost at 0 workers is obviously 0. We're not paying anybody, so we don't have any variable cost. Now we're going to take 65 times 2 to figure out 130 is our variable cost for 2 workers. 65 times 3 gives us 195. So 65 times 4 will give you 260. 65 times 5 will give you 325. 65 times 6 will give you 390. So now you have your variable costs for all of your workers. Now you can figure out your fixed costs, because we know that total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost. So if we take this, we know that our total cost at 1 worker is 110. We know our variable cost at 1 worker is 65. We can take 110 minus 65. If you take 110 minus 65, it will give you a fixed cost of 45. And remember, fixed cost stays the same. And so we can now fill in our fixed cost for all of our workers. And remember, fixed cost is even 45 for 0 workers, because even before we hired anybody, we still had to find a place for them all to work. We had to pay rent on it. So it's 45 all the way down. Now, to figure out the total cost, all we have to do is add across. So 45 plus 0 is obviously 45. Now we're going to do 45 plus 135, and that 130, sorry, and that will give us 175. Now we're going to do 45 plus 195 to get 240. For 4 workers, we're going to add 45 plus 260 to get 305. For 5 workers, we're taking 45 plus 325 to get 370. For 6 workers, we're going to take 45 plus 390 to get 435. So that's total cost. Now, to figure out marginal cost, remember, marginal cost is how much extra it costs us to be able to produce a particular product. So, I'm going to move this out of the way. So, marginal cost is going to be, marginal cost at 1 worker is total cost at 1 worker minus the total cost at 0 workers, divided by marginal product at 1 worker. So, for 0 workers, we didn't add anybody, we didn't change anything. It's the same thing as when we had marginal product at 0 workers, we didn't add anybody or change anything. So you can't do marginal cost at 0 workers. For 1 worker, now we're going to take total cost at 1 worker, which is 110 minus 45, which is the total cost at 0 workers, and we're going to divide by our marginal product at 1 worker. So for 110 minus 45 divided by 14. So if you did 110 minus 45, you're going to get 65, and you're going to divide by 14, and you're going to get 4.64. For 2 workers, now you're going to take 175 minus 110, and we're going to divide by 27. Remember, we're dividing by marginal product, not total product. So we're going to divide by 27. So 175 minus 110 will give you 65, divided by 27, which will give you 2.41. For 3 workers, we're going to subtract 240 minus 175, and we're going to divide by 37, because that's the marginal product at 3 workers. So if you do 240 minus 175, you'll get 65 divided by 37, and you'll get 1.76. For 4 workers, you're going to subtract 305 minus 240, and you're going to divide by 15, because that's the marginal product at 4 workers. So 305 minus 240 is going to give you 65. And you take 65 divided by 15, you'll get 4.33333. For 5 workers, you're going to take 370 minus 305 and divide by 5 workers, or 5, because that's our marginal product at 5 workers. So 370 minus 305 will give you 65. 65 divided by 5 will give you 13. All right, and the last worker, 6 workers, you can't do the marginal product for the last worker because you'd be dividing by a negative marginal product. You can't divide by a negative marginal product because that will give you a negative cost, which doesn't really make any sense. So, if you were paying attention, you'll notice that the numerator, every time we did this, was always 65. The reason it was always 65 is because that's the wage. That's how much our variable cost increased by. Since our fixed costs stay the same, our total cost is also going to increase by 65. So if you remember, you can actually do wage divided by marginal product, and that will also give you your marginal cost.